We are live. All right, y'all. Check it out, man. Welcome to the first Shield Squad takeover of G-Con Radio. I'm glad you're on today to talk about Hebrew Israelite MCs and Hebrew Israelite hip-hop culture. What's up, Adam Coleman? You in the house?
Yeah. What up?
Adam, can you introduce yourself real quick? And then Abu, can you introduce yourself real quick? Do like a minute bio.
Yeah, this is Adam Coleman, a.k.a. Scott Lane, the Black Bruce Wayne, the host of the True ID podcast. I also write apologetics articles for freethinkingministries.com and also for kingmovement.com. Just trying to get the word out, man, that Christianity is not the white man's religion, and that I deal a lot with, I guess you could say, moral philosophy and just kind of arguments against atheism within the African-American context. So that's kind of been my area of focus, man. So definitely check me out at TrueID, TRUID podcast.com. And I'm just here to serve the Lord, man. Just here to get his word out and see people drawn to him, and and just give my best toward that effort toward the kingdom. So that's what's up.
All right, Abu, my man, introduce yourself, and then we'll kick this off.
I'm Abu Khamar. I guess I would describe myself as an amateur apologist of sorts. I've had an interest in the Hebrew Israelites for quite some time. I'd say for slightly over a decade, mainly or almost entirely focusing on the One West branches. So VOCAB invited me to discuss this subject, specifically how the various Israelite factions overlap with hip-hop. And I guess I have a mild familiarity with the subject because I remember some of the older individuals and groups from, I guess, maybe the most famous being in the past was Killer Priest, and then perhaps more obscure, but in my opinion a lot more interesting, was the Byzantine kings. So I guess I can I'm hoping to make a small contribution to the discussion.
All right. Yes, ma'am. This is the first time doing this, so apologize to everybody for sound difficulties and all that. We're on LaRon's channel. He lets us borrow, Shield Squad Takeover. He's a member of the crew. But it's Abu tonight all the way out in Jersey, sometimes New York, and my man Adam Coleman in Virginia. And, of course, myself, VOCAB Malone from Phoenix, Arizona, at least for now. So what set this off was the Hebrew Israelite rap scene kind of being in the news lately. And when I say news, I'm not talking about mainstream media, but I'm talking about some of the internet sources that we might go to check out. So specifically, there's a writer who often writes for a well-known Jewish newspaper in New York. It's over 100 years old. It's called The Forward. That's the name of it. And in that, he usually writes about these issues. But this particular article appeared instead on Genius.com. And they had some accompanying videos as well, which were pretty well done overall, I thought. And so we wanted to talk about that and give our commentary, since this happened barely over a week ago, 8 days ago at this point. So I'm going to read some of the article, and then I'd like to stop and actually get some of your guys' commentary. I thought that would be a good way to do it, and then we'll break some stuff down. The reason why we're doing this tonight, though, is to give people some further insight to something they may not know exists. People might know about the Hebrew Israelites, so-called. They might know about hip-hop, and they might know about Kendrick Lamar, for example, but they might not know much more than that. We're going to try to fill you in, because education is part of being a good apologist, as well as somebody who is observing with hopefully Christian wisdom what's going on. And so that's what we're trying to do tonight as apologists, to equip you all with that information. So it's called Inside the Hebrew Israelite Movement That's Inspiring Kendrick Lamar and Kodak Black. The Community Feels Conflicted About Its New Celebrity Fans, by Sam Kestenbaum. Kendrick Lamar dropped his fourth studio album, Damn, back in April, and attentive fans may have caught a new reference in the rapper's dense and elusive rhymes. On the album's third track, Ya, the Compton rapper declares, "I'm an Israelite. Don't call me black no more." A few moments later, he adds, my cousin called Duckworth, said, "Know my worth," and Deuteronomy said that we all been cursed. Kendrick is referencing the book of Deuteronomy in the Bible. where Moses addresses the 12 tribes of Israel who have made their exodus from slavery in Egypt and wandered for 40 years in the desert. The Israelites are about to enter the land promised to them by God, and Moses gives them God's holy law and warns of dire consequences should they break it. Kendrick's lyrics often delve into spiritual territory, but the Old Testament fire and brimstone is a new theme for him. Perhaps disillusioned by what many see as a dark turn in the country's history, he is searching for roots by referencing the teachings of the Hebrew Israelites, a black religious movement that has thrived on the margins of the country's spiritual landscape for over a century. Lamar is not alone. 2 months after the release of Dan, Kodak Black echoed Kendrick's lines on First Day Out, the single he dropped after being released from prison. I'm an Israelite. I can't lie, I'm #Israel, #Tribes of Israel, Kodak announced on Instagram, posing with the Star of David pennant dangling around his neck. While affinity with the Israelites is common in broader African-American religious discourse, Hebrew Israelites identify as the literal genealogical descendants of the people mentioned in the Bible. The movement is theologically diverse. Some follow the New Testament, others study only the Hebrew Bible. Israelites understand their spiritual practice not as a religion, but as an ancestral way of life to which they are returning. There is no single patriarch of the Israelite movement, but rather generations of 19th to 20th century leaders who taught similar messages evoking ancient ancestry and teaching spiritual uplift. The movement's emergence can be traced to the late 19th century when former slaves had their hopes for a more just United States dashed after Reconstruction was abandoned by the federal government due to intense resistance from white supremacists. Blacks in the South became subject to restrictive Jim Crow laws and were the victims of periodic racial violence across the country. Hebrew Israelites point to the chapter of Deuteronomy 28, in particular a passage that describes how the biblical Israelites will be sent back in ships to Egypt for their disobedience to God, as a prophetic foretelling of the enslavement of African people in the Americas. It was Deuteronomy 28 that caught Kendrick's attention during one-on-one Bible sessions with his cousin Carl Duckworth, a member of an Israelite organization called Israelite United in Christ, who goes by the Hebrew name Karnai ben Israel. The guy is really looking and searching for this truth. Duckworth explained in a late April Periscope broadcast from IUIC, speaking about his famous cousin. When Deuteronomy 28 came out, it was like he was blown away. It was like, wow. Carl Duckworth can be heard referencing the Deuteronomy 28 prophecy in a voicemail recording towards the end of the song Fear. Kodak Black also encountered a teacher who introduced him to Israelite beliefs. While serving 97 days in a Florida jail for violating house arrest, Kodak met an Israelite teacher known as Priest Kahan, who does regular prison ministry in the state. Kodak, who is of Haitian descent, was particularly impressed with the Israelite teaching that present-day nationalities are descendants from 12 tribes of Israel. Haitians, according to a widely circulated tribe chart, are descended from the priestly tribe of Levi. Just as Israelite beliefs crystallized in the wake of Reconstruction, contemporary events may be leading to renewed interest. Now I'm going to stop there. We're starting to see at least a few people trying to actually get into some of the nuance of this and doing a decent job overall. And so that's a new thing. And so the Hebrew Israelites, they might think this is a good thing, but I think ultimately they should probably understand that means people are going to be less surprised and more understanding of their beliefs. And I'm just going to say this, honestly, guys, if you think you're a Hebrew Israelite, that's not a good thing. You know why? Because the more people have information about your beliefs, the easier it is going to be exposed how fragile they really are. I'm just saying. So the next 3 paragraphs, he quotes a professor who writes about Hebrew Israelites, I guess, and then talks a little bit about what's said on Kendrick's album. He goes back to other hip-hop artists where they would reference, Dr. York or somebody like that, and it talks a little bit about other appearances of Hebrew Israelite kind of cameos in lyrics from Dougie Fresh's 1988 single Rising to the Top, or on Kill a Priest, which was already mentioned, One Step, 1998 album, where he says early natives related to thrones of David captured by some patriots and thrown on slave ships, and he also references Deuteronomy 28:68. He talks about Chingy, who came out in 2013 with King Judah. He transitioned from rapping about right there to King Judah, and then now Kendrick Lamar. But then he actually talks about actual Hebrew Israelite rappers. And so let me reference some actual Hebrew Israelites, what they might say about this. So some have denounced artists like Kendrick and Kodak, doubting their dedication to the movement and saying they are still mired in a sinful world, which I think is actually a good assessment. And one member of GMS says this in a YouTube video: "We're going to go in on these so-called celebrity Israelites. Kendrick Lamar not putting his whole heart into Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai," he said. And this is the only part of the this is you like that? You like that? GMS always got to be the trolls, don't they?
Yeah, I also think
they're
driven by a deep. I think the criticisms that he's not particularly dedicated to their faith, to their interpretation of the faith, or what have you, is accurate. But at the same time, I think GMS is very much largely driven by jealousy. That's another thing that drives them. I mean, there is an ideological purity and ideological strictness doctrinal strictness that they may adhere to, but at the same time, jealousy really does drive them, and I suspect that's part of it here.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but my understanding of their practice, just like you have some Muslims who do not believe in basically enjoying any form of music with instrumentation, is my understanding. There's folks who go along those lines. GMS seems, from what I understand, to not believe in doing the rapping. They don't. It doesn't seem like it seems like they believe that's playing a game. Do you know anything about that, Abu?
That would be news to me, but honestly, with GMS, James 1:8 comes to mind, because I think they could take one position today and take the exact opposite position tomorrow. As for an example that many of their critics have pointed out, there was a member who had fallen off years ago. I forget his name. He wasn't someone of major significance, but he had wanted to write a book, and maybe there was more than one that wanted to write a book. And Tahar's objection was always, you don't need to write a book on the doctrines. We already got the book right here, and he would refer to the King James Bible. And so he was absolutely disdainful of the idea of trying to put out a book that explains their views, their doctrinal views. And then within a couple of years of spending considerable time condemning that practice, he made a 180 and tried to come out with a book or two. I don't know what happened to that, but nonetheless, I could see that happening with their attitudes with music. I wouldn't be surprised if one day they're in general, and then the next day they find someone in their camp who they consider talented and make a 180-degree turn. I bet you if a rapper shows particular affinity to them, maybe even pays some tithes to them, you'd see a different attitude.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the actual attitude is at the moment.
I can see that. Now, I can tell you that when it comes to GMS, whenever I've encountered them on the street and kind of joked about, hey, let's do a MC battle or something like that, half serious, they would always kind of shoot it down, like, we don't have time to play games like that. And I've heard them speak against it, like, yeah.
Interesting that something that just came to mind that I totally forgot about. I don't know what his Hebrew name is, but the gentleman Redbeard, the one in Columbus, from your hometown.
Aaron is he goes by Aaron.
Aaron, okay. Before Aaron revealed his identity, he was, before he started showing up in a camp and stuff like that, years ago, if I'm not mistaken, he used to be a personality on the internet. And if I'm not mistaken, he came out with a video, which was sort of like a music video, but it was sort of like half rap, half heavy metal with swastikas all over it. That's one of the things that stood out for me. It was just a silhouette doing this sort of music video with swastikas everywhere and just yelling out that he's an Israelite. I'm not 100% sure that was Aaron, but I'm fairly confident that the person who did that, it was some GMS fan periphery who did that, and I feel fairly confident that it was him. Of course, he can correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, man, I would love to hear that joint. I would love to hear that. But all right, so, well, I don't know, because I sometimes hear mocking, the other groups for making videos and stuff like that. So,
I
can
certainly
see
him
GMS
express disdain for rap in particular. So who knows?
Yeah. So, and then there is, and back to the article, there is even dissent in the group closest to Kendrick, with some members preferring music produced with Israelite doctrine firmly in mind. By the way, that used to be Brother Jay. Jay, the producer, used to be one of the IUIC producers who produced music. What's the album he had, Tides and Fringes or whatever, with Israelite doctrine firmly in mind. And then In fact, it's just kind of interesting to hear him talk about it because he has a whole insight into the kind of like the IUIC. I don't know if I want to call it industry, but the aspect of music and art that they've got going on. And, now he's, of course, a born-again Christian and debating Hebrew Israelites, but he used to be someone who was along those lines. In a Periscope broadcast, a member of IUIC also cautioned listeners against buying Kendrick's new album. I wouldn't suggest just going out and buying the album, a leader known as Deacon Abayel said. He took the opportunity to add, we got some albums out. Now, see, this is all interesting. It's like there's a certain ambivalence I think they have to have by some of the bigger guys like Kendrick because they don't want to distance themselves too far, but they also don't want to put themselves too close. And I understand that, but I do know that they did a challenge where a lot of them would rap over different Kendrick Lamar beats about being an Israelite or whatever. When it came out, I don't know if any of you guys saw that. I forget the name of that particular challenge. Where different MCs would, mainly from IUIC it seemed, would drop some verse over one of Kendrick's beats right kind of after the album came out. So they did take advantage of it that way, but that's not a very big deal. IUIC has its own roster of rappers and producers who put out polished music videos promoting the group's message and work. In one video entitled Purple Rain, referencing the group's distinctive purple garb, a group of MCs trade lines in front of a foreboding computer-generated skyline. The group's charismatic leader delivers snippets of sermons in between verses. Now I'm going to stop right there. Adam Coleman's on the line, a.k.a. Scott Lane, my man. We have got to talk about Purple Rain, my man.
Purple Rain.
We have got. So first, I'm going to give you a second to formulate your thoughts. But Abu, have you seen Purple Rain?
I have, and actually, when you brought it up, my first thought was the gentleman you just mentioned, Abayel. He was one of the people who appears in that.
Yeah. Well, so today, before we did this broadcast, I went through a grip of IUIC tracks. People within their camp or whatever, because they always have the logo and stuff like that. And some of them are pretty funny, pretty interesting. Like, let me just run some titles at you before we talk about Purple Rain. There's a group out of IUIC's record label called, which is called Original Royalty. That's the name of the label, and the name of the group is called the Benjavites. And the Benjavites do, like, as you can imagine, if you know anything about the 12 Tribes chart, Benjamites, not Benjavites, but Benjamites are considered to be like Jamaicans and folks like that. So, of course, the Benjavites, they're a reggae, like dancehall group. So they got a song called In Control. They got a song called Burning that I listened to. And it was, it was all right. I mean, they were all well produced, no doubt about that. And they also have kind of like a neo-soul, Erykah Badu type, R&B sisters, Zemira Israel, and they got a song called Woolly Hair Anthem, and that's also on Original Royalty. Then IUIC Miami made a song called Riding Through the City. And then when Black Lives was big, they actually did a thing called the Black Christ Matters Challenge. And they actually have a song that goes, Black Christ Matters, Black Christ Matters. It's a really kind of weird song, but you should check it out. Then they got one where one of their main teacher dudes raps the whole time, and it's called Kings in the Building. Then one of the funnier, these are all just strictly IUIC songs I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about other dudes. I'm just only talking about IUIC affiliates. Another one I watched today is called It's an Israelite Party. And that one talks about blowing the shofar and everyone's dressed modest. It's an Israelite party. So, there's a lot there, and that's only skimming the surface. But Purple Rain is kind of the pinnacle. Now, we got to talk about Purple Rain. My man Adam Coleman as an MC, as a dope MC, Scott Lane, what you want to say about Purple Rain?
Yeah, you know what, man? I try to be as charitable as possible when I listen to people's music. But I mean, it's actually interesting. Like, one thing I kind of felt as I was watching the Purple Rain video, as well as some of the other ones I was watching, it really reminded me of the early kind of gospel hip-hop days. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just kind of, there's something about that vibe. It just really reminded like the early gospel hip-hop days. And so, but anyway, I try to listen to it from an artistic standpoint. Obviously, I'm going to, differ with them as far as their doctrine is concerned. But, I try to listen to it, for lyrics and all that kind of stuff. And, I'm not trying to diss anybody. I mean, there's a couple of MCs. I wasn't really feeling it. like that. You know what I mean? But I guess what really threw me off was I can't remember the second or the third verse, but like cats like cussing
Second
in the
verse.
joint. You know what I mean? I was like, word.
Okay. Right. Dropping some swear words.
Yeah, like one of them, and I might be getting two songs mixed up, but it was like one joint where it's like somebody said GD something. I'm like, really though? Like that's how you represent the Most High? You know what I mean? It just seemed really odd to me, and I think what happens is, well, at least from my perspective, what I saw in the Purple Rain video is kind of you see the culture shining through, but you also see some of the inconsistencies. Yeah, I guess that maybe amidst that culture shining through as well. You mean you see people trying to sun folks on doctrine, but at the same time they cussing at them, and it's like this really weird mixture of carnality and I guess Hebrewisms at the same time. It's really kind of odd to me. I can't really say I necessarily from an artistic standpoint, I can't say I necessarily enjoyed the track. I think that some of the rhyme schemes is a little bit questionable. You know what I mean? But I guess I try not to be too hard, but as an MC, I really wasn't feeling it. I wasn't really on it like that. But I mean you rhymed as well too, man. Like what were your thoughts on it?
Well, as a semi-retired, always below mediocre MC, I ain't trying to say too much about that. But right. I do agree with the assessment that similar to the early days of Christian hip hop, like there's a lot of zeal, a lot of passion, a lot of energy. Because I want everyone to stop. Here's part of the reason I wanted to do this show is I would love for people to just look up one of the songs we talk about. For example, here's a great place to start. Banging on Esau.
That niggas better stand the hell up, man. They don't give a damn about you Negroes, man. But you want to love every damn body, man. And everybody hates your goddamn guts. This how we banging on Esau.
BANGIN on ESA.
Right, banging on Esau.
Official music video. Yeah, Army of Israel headquarters. It's 6 minutes and 39 seconds. The reason why it's a great place to start is because it has a bunch of different dudes from different camps because it's trying to be like a collaborative effort. A lot of people are ambassadors, the Lions of Israel, and all that. But especially the last, one of the last songs where the guys are in the full leathers and they're out there rapping in front of car lights, and that dude does curse. He rhymes pulpit with a word you could probably guess what he rhymes it with. And then it's very interesting because the whole concept of banging on Esau is letting this white man have it, letting the so-called white man have it is a concept. But I think it's a great video to start with because you'll see the passion and all that, but you'll see mixed production values, mixed quality of MCs. But then again, I kind of try to be charitable too because honestly, if I flip on the radio, I'm gonna hate most of that stuff on there too. So honestly, I get more enjoyment about some of this Hebrew Israelite hip hop than I do most of the stuff on the radio anyway. So
real talk though, honestly, real talk. Listen, I really try to be fair, right? Hey man, the banging on Esau joint went hard though. I can't even lie. You know what I mean? I don't agree with the doctrine. You know what I'm saying? I don't agree with what he's saying, but the beat was hard. You know what I'm saying? My man wrote the beat. You know what I mean? He put his rhyme scheme was nice. He had a nice flow. He had some kind of punchlines in there. I'm like, okay, like I said, I try to be fair, and even with, you sent me about, 6 or 7 joints. I listened to all of them, and a lot of them was kind of like that trap music type feel, which is not really my vibe. Mm-hmm. But I try to evaluate it based on, what that artist is attempting to do. You know what I'm saying? So even though I might not necessarily feel it, I can say that they did it well. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But when it comes to banging on Esau, I'm like, okay, he had a few bars there though. He had a few bars.
Yeah, a good reviewer.
I was like, dang, man, I might not even be able to do the show with VOCAB after listening to the show, man.
A good reviewer will judge a project, based upon its own merits. And so that's a good way to do it. But I think banging on Esau is a great place to start. Once you watch one of these or two of these, you start able to see the other ones on the side, and then you can kind of go through, and it'll just be like a little rabbit trail. And so banging on Esau is a great place to start. These guys made shirts about it and everything. And I thought it was interesting. Banging on Esau is one of the most, cross-camp, rap ones. A lot of the rap songs are made by specific camps,
sure.
right? But here's what's so interesting. The collaborative effort by the Hebrew Israelites, where it involved multiple camps, what was the unifying theme? Banging on Esau.
Banging on
that's
Esau.
How you get everybody. Yeah, that's how you get everybody together. Not bragging on Christ. I don't know the Crosswind song from their History album called Our God, and the whole song they just brag on the one true God of the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And that's what gets Christians amped. But part of what gets Hebrew Israelites amped is banging on Esau, or the fake Jews, as another song we'll talk about later. Now, back to Purple Rain.
Can I say something on that, though? Can I say something on that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is one thing I wanted to get to. I had a couple of things I wanted to say about culture, but since you just brought that point up, let me just, touch on that point right quick, is that you do see, music itself, religion, the arts in general, those are, vehicles of culture, so you can see, some of the common themes that's going on amongst the culture by listening to its music, by watching the movies, by, taking in, the arts and things like that. And so, as I'm sitting down listening to some of the Hebrew Israelite stuff, what I do notice is the main focus is, identity. It's all about, I'm an Israelite and I'm keeping the laws. That's the most consistent theme. And then sprinkled in there is things about the Most High, but really they talk about the Most High in context of who they are and what they're doing versus being consumed, basically versus it being the other way around. So you really do see, and they probably wouldn't like hearing this, but you really do see like a man-centeredness, amongst their culture through that music,
A video that proves the point. I'm bringing up Israelite Boy by Crunk God Euro and Obadiah.
Right.
I want people to hear a little bit of this hook.
That's why I'm an Israelite, boy. I come in Shalom not to fight, 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 boy. Do the commandments of right, 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 boy. That's why I'm an Israelite. Boy.
Yeah, that's the Israelite boy. Yeah, I think that was the first one I heard today. And that's a perfect example. Like, it's kind of a trap music joint, which is not necessarily my vibe, but I think that they, in terms of what they were trying to do with it, from an artistic standpoint, I think they accomplished that. But now that being said, but again, for the culture thing, like, again, the whole idea, the whole point of the song is, I'm an Israelite. I'm an Israelite. Yeah, that's it. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Now, I want to mention something. So, we're going to get back to Purple Rain, but since we're talking about this video, by the way, I'll never understand this guy's name, Crunk God Euro. But
yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, it seems kind of odd. Yeah,
I don't know. But Israelite Boy, you're looking at their shirts is interesting. So they one of it says Ahai is chosen. A lot of the guys have shirts that say Ahai is chosen, and the other guys have a shirt. It simply just is a box that says laws, statutes, and commandments. That's what is on the shirt. Ahai. So exactly what you just said. Identity. That's the main thing. Here's who I am. I'm an Israelite boy, like literally over and over again. And then Ahai is chosen. Now, Abu, can you help me out? Ahaya.
I was just going to bring that up. I was just going to say that sort of gives away, if not a sectarian affiliation, if it doesn't give away their sect, it at least gives away who's been influencing them. The name for God originally amongst the one Westers was Yahweh. That was originally what they did. And it was specifically Racha Shayar, who's the gentleman, the head of GOCC, who debated James White a little over a year ago. He was the one who changed that and came out with Ahaya, which is their attempt to apply Lashon Kodash to Ehyeh, which appeared Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh in Exodus 3:14. So he rejects the Tetragrammaton and he goes with that instead, with Ehyeh, or in Lashon Kodash they say Ahaya. So for them to be saying that, it seems to imply that either he's a member of GOCC or he's influenced by someone who's been influenced by that. Although I think the name has started to spread beyond GOCC, but it started with them. It started with Racha Shayar.
Yeah, see, and that's why I think the three of us can be a fun little panel. I mean, everybody in Shield Squad is dope, but that's why I was like, hey, you two, let's do this. Because Scott Lane is, besides Tony Ray, but I know my man ain't going to listen to the songs, you know what I'm saying? If I send him, you're definitely the real the real MC of the bunch, and so I was like wanted to get your opinion at that level, and then Abu could bring in some of that historic information because we're also going to talk a little bit about the history, some of the old school stuff in a second here. But let's get back now to Purple Rain. I got to play this second verse, man. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, you got to play this.
Purple rain on me. Exponential growth, that's why you're hating on me.
So, exponential growth, that's why you hating on me. You want to comment real quick, Abu? You already mentioned something.
Well, I think that what that is, that seems to be a jab directly at now, I could be wrong. I don't know their motivations. It could be for a lot of groups or a lot of people, but I suspect at least partly that's a GMS who has grown increasingly angry about that group as it's moved up and grown. The way the analogy, and I'm not the first to use this analogy. Others have used this before me, in all fairness. But the analogy that's fair here is to compare the IUIC to the ICGJC, the Tazadaki's group. Now, I don't mean that disrespectfully towards the IUIC. I think they can say, oh, we're very different from Tazadaki's group. The only comparison that I'm making was that there was a period not that long ago where the ICGJC was the biggest group, the flashiest group, the most organized group, and the IUIC has followed down that path with the organization and had more growth. It seems like it's significantly outpaced the ICGJC now, where they're the premier group. Now, the only reason I bring that up is because when the ICGJC was the largest group, the most flashy group, the most organized group, GMS's jealousy was, their envy was just seething and just dripping from them in so many of their videos. And now as Tazadaki's group has sort of faded a little bit, it seems like GMS has forgot about them, and their anger and their rage towards the IUIC has grown and grown and grown as that group has grown, and it seems to obviously be guided in part by jealousy. Of course, GMS would say there's so many other things. There's Tahar's relationship with Nathaniel Alaga going all the way back decades, but nonetheless, jealousy is driving it, at least in part.
I think he's talking about, but it's going to get even more specific here. Can't watch this, guys.
IUIC acting like you don't see. Boy, we know you frontin'. Please see us on the corners, unlike you, we be like read. Coming out the scriptures, yeah, you know just how we teach. Teach class online 7 days of the week. Being earned everything that you wish you could be. You see it? Shafat, whole campus surfing. Y'all ain't the original school, you just refurbished version.
Oh, boy. Your whole campus
search. That sounds, if I'm not mistaken, that's a jab at ISUPK?
Yep, you ain't the original school. You're just a refurbished version. Now, if you could see the video, right when he says that, a little hat drops. And that's the exact type of hat that Johanna sometimes and that dude in Philly likes to rock. And then on the front, instead of their name, like it always has UPK, it says refurb.
Refurb, yeah.
This is a major,
I think he dropped it in there a couple times. He dropped it in there like twice.
I can't see what you're playing, but if I'm not mistaken, that might be Abiel himself who's doing that. Is it a larger gentleman who's doing that?
That's right. He's a real big dude,
Yeah, he said it. Yeah, it's him.
Going by the voice, I think that's Abiel, the gentleman who was part of an interview.
Yeah, I think he said it earlier, yeah. No, I want to say, too, I mean, like I said, I try to be fair. Like, to their credit, this is actually a pretty good video. I mean, like, if they wanted to represent their camp, you know, I mean, amongst the videos that I saw, I thought this was a pretty solid video. I mean, you got some graphics in there, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know, you got a pretty background and stuff. You know,
again, this is more entertaining than most of the nonsense that's out. I mean, so whatever, you know.
I agree.
Now,
I agree.
I mean, you know, I'm gonna say this though: if anybody's listening is a Christian hip hop fan, I mean, Christian hip hop just smashes this. When I say Christian hip hop, obviously there's 1,000 Christian rappers nowadays. I don't mean me, okay?
Right,
everybody. Right. Like I said, I'm not even in the conversation. I'm an old local amateur retired person, okay? I'm talking about the dudes who are really putting it down in the underground and in the mainstream sound. Christian hip-hop just smashes on this because the best of the best are really good. But within the parameters of everything going on, you know, I'm trying to give it its love. But let me continue with this.
Open your mouth, but won't speak with no verses. We got Bibles while y'all yapping, man. Y'all captain is worthless. I know, but the truth is the truth.
Do you hear that? Your captain is worthless.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear that?
That's a shot. It's definitely a shot.
So I'm just going to say this. People can say whatever, man, because they just say whatever about whatever we say. This shows that, man, this ain't really Hebrew. This ain't really Israelite. This ain't really Jewish. I'm just saying this shows that there's people of African descent doing they're doing culture in America. I'm just saying, man.
Right.
Like, it's so
Right.
obvious, from the slang to the swag to the way everything's spit to the approach. Like it's clear what it is. And the sad thing is, like, they talk about Jewish. I mean, they're actually the ones perpetrating that. I came up with something new, and in the description, I don't know how often I'm going to use it, and it's going to be very offensive. But I said, how can I use Hebrew Israelite as a term when I write without quotation marks, which I always use? Listen what I did, man. I put, here's how I spelled Hebrew Israelite. Normal spelling of Hebrew, and then Israel dash capital Lite. Hebrew Israelite.
Oh, Israel-Lite, right.
Which is fair.
Yeah, man.
Because it's more of a
they're not
veneer
gonna
than
like
anything
that.
else.
I'm just saying, man.
Yeah,
so we're not hating on this. We're just saying, like, it kind of like shows what the culture really is, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that. I wish they would just. People should embrace who they are, man, because God made them a certain way. But let me play this verse, y'all.
Got deep in the booth, having fun with your slander, cause our fruit is our proof. Yeah, we worldwide with it, never mention you fools. Move. That's right, working men coming through. We got jobs, we ain't living off our women Hebrew. That's a nickel.
Ooh, move, working man coming through. We ain't living off our women. Dude,
that actually has, that's relevant to the disputes, actually, because the old
break it down, Abu.
Was it? I don't know if it's. I don't remember if it's Isaiah 4 or Isaiah 7, but there's a verse that makes this passing reference in Isaiah to a day when 7 women, I think it's Isaiah 4, where 7 women will come to one man and say, "Let us follow you." And there were people in the old school even before the splits, who used to say that, you know, they used that to justify their womanizing. They used it to justify their not providing for these multiple women that they would associate with and deal with and sometimes impregnate. And Nathaniel Alaga took his group in a different direction, where he accused people from the past of being bums, of promoting a bum lifestyle. I remember GMS was always really offended by that they had a video years ago called the Be a Bum Doctrine. And I guess that's a reflection of that. This, you know, they're men who are trying to be more responsible, especially towards the women that they're married to, while some of these other groups are just engaging in womanizing and living off their women and, you know, just being very irresponsible.
And, you know, let me say a few things about all that. That shows that type of doctrine within there, you know, to get a bunch of women and live off them doctrine. That shows right now when these people say, oh, we're building a nation and a community and we're strengthening this and that, man, they just enriching themselves, making themselves fat, you know what I'm saying? And no wonder they don't want to let some of this doctrine go. If you got a doctrine now, you know, gives you 6 ladies around you working for you, and you get to have a different each night in the house or what. I mean, now I know that not all the groups do that, but what I'm saying is this goes back to the old school. This goes back to Old One West. And what we're doing by breaking down this little verse is showing you all this. If you get into Hebrew Israelite hip-hop to check it out as a Christian apologist, meaning you listen into it, see what's going on, there's a lot in some of the songs you can get and glean and dissect. Yeah, you can get the basics and doctrine, and some of the songs are actually pretty simple, okay. But if you listen with an analytical, spiritually discerning, biblically wise mind, you actually will get a lot. And we're trying to add some of the history to show you. Like, if you would have just heard this verse out of nowhere, you would have been like, oh, he's dissing somebody, whatever. We're showing you the context, because this goes deep, real deep. And the cuts go deep, too, by the way, UPKers. Now, let me play this next verse.
But you say you a Jew? Hell out of here with that debate, and you negating the truth now. Ain't nobody playing leather headband, man.
Ain't nobody playing leather band head, man. And the refurb thing makes another
I don't know who that was.
Says that.
No, that's back to ISUPK, it seems, with the leather headband.
Yeah, because that's how they dress.
Oh, okay. Got you. Yeah, I mean, it's real interesting, man. That's the thing, like, you know, what I think is, I hope I pronounce it right, but Abayel, you know, I really looked at his verse. I kind of looked at it from a different perspective as the other verses on the song. Some of the other verses I was feeling, some of them wasn't, but like he was coming at it from a battle tip. And so, you know, as I was sitting there listening to it, I'm like, okay, I tried to put myself in the community so to kind of see what he was getting at. And when you really listen to him, like he was going in. He was going in. You know what I mean? Like he had a couple punches in there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, on a battle tip, this dude just did a monster job.
You went in on a battle tip, you know. And so I was like, okay, I see you. You know, the only problem is like, but then at the same time, what I also saw is kind of, you know, and I don't know if they use terms like, well, yeah, I think they do, just kind of like this worldly, carnal, you know, just kind of coming out of the flesh. And so it was like a weird mixture. Because on the one hand, I can say, okay, cool, I'm with you. As far as, you know, if people are pimping out women, that's not cool. So you stand up against it. That's what's up. You know, but on the other hand, you tell people to shut the F up and, using, you know, curse words and stuff. It's like, you know, you see that kind of weird mixture. And like I said, it's like, you know, I see that, and then I think about, you know, the Hebrew Israelites that I've interacted with, you know, in person or online and so forth. It's not to say you can't paint them all broad brush. You definitely can't do that, you know, but it's just a very interesting mixture of, I hate to say it, I mean, just you see the flesh, and then you see some of these positive ideals coming through as well. It's like this weird mix. And I think it's because you have a people group who are just so thirsty for validation, so thirsty for order in their lives, you know what I'm saying? And they find this organization where they can, you know, somewhat find those things, but then it's still mixed in with these man-centered ideas, you know, and therefore, you know, you find like this hodgepodge between, you know, both the good and the bad, so to speak. Very, very, well, you know, I think watching these videos really opened my eyes from a cultural standpoint to some things I really hadn't, you know, seen before. It's very interesting.
That's why I wanted to do this, exactly what you said, and I just used that genius.com article as a jumping off point. I want to talk about this for a while. And you can see we're only touching the surface. We're not going to have time to talk about all the MCs like, you know, Solomon the Jew and all these guys. We're not going to have time to go about all of them. But just making a point that, you know, this is there. And if you can learn a lot if you listen in that way, just like what you're saying. Because the type of apologetics we're into and that we're trying to hopefully equip and do with other people is different than your standard traditional thing that you might learn even in a Sunday school class or seminary. And there's a different level of cultural analysis that has to happen. And it's also, there's just different aspects to it that you got to take. And so playing these rap songs is actually really, really important. And this is kind of, you know, people are going to twist this metaphor. But what I'm about to do, they're going to twist it. But that's okay because they twist everything, including Paul's writings like Peter talked about. Now check this out. There was in the Star Wars expanded universe, there was a blue-skinned admiral that was created by the science fiction writer named Timothy Zahn. And this admiral's name was Admiral Thrawn. And he's since made an appearance, if anybody watches, the Star Wars Rebels show. He's like a really dope character because he's the opposite of Darth Vader and the Emperor. You know, he's real cold and calm and cool and calculating. But here's the big thing he would do is he would study his enemies or people he would be about to attack. He would spend hours and hours in a dark room alone with their most famous art, and he would just watch their art. That was like the main thing he would do, and he would just meditate on it. And one of his like lackeys would come in, and you know he would ask him a question like what they saw, and he would always be basically kind of disappointed in their like shallow answer, but he would break it down about what you could learn from the people and the culture from the art, and then that would give him, you know, tactics and how you go forward. Now, like I said, the way they would twist it is OC vocab's talking about, you know, this dark side guy, you know, attacking us and studying our. That's not all what I'm saying, because I'm not talking about using it to attack. I'm talking about to understand the psyche and to understand the culture that's going around with it. Because once you start having like this music aspect, it just shows you it's like a full-orbed lifestyle thing. Because I want everyone to think about this before we, again, get back into the rest of this. This one verse is almost over. But I want everyone to think about this. These guys aren't doing this at this point in time for money. There may be some moron who's like delusion who thinks he's going to make money off this. But most of these guys, they know there ain't no market for this. Their boys will big up them, and that's it. But clearly money and time and thought and energy is being poured into it. Clearly.
True.
In fact, probably a disproportionate amount of time and money and energy and artistry is going into it, considering its audience. Although, Adam, you did note you were surprised at how many views some of the YouTube videos got. But nonetheless, this ain't like some label searching them out, this and that. These guys are putting out stuff to teach. They're putting out anthems. They're putting out stuff that they probably feel passionately about. My point is, just them doing this alone, because once you start watching a few of these videos or some of these songs, you're going to realize, whoa, there's a whole lot of this stuff. And some of these guys have been doing it since the 90s. Like, this isn't just like one or two rappers. This is a whole grip. Like, there's only maybe 5 Mormon rappers I know about. And you may be laughing right now, like, what? Yeah, I actually interviewed Babe, one of them, probably the best one. Really? There's a few Mormon rappers. Yeah, I've had quite a few run-ins. There's a decent amount of Catholic rappers. They go on a website called Fat Mass. But check this out, man. Jehovah's Witness rappers, you know, you start going down the list, there's not even a ton of true blue Islamic rappers. Now there's some in the UK, this and that. But my point is that this shows you there's an energy going on because they're doing it regardless of. And that's something that is important. And I think we should also take note of that as well. Anybody want to comment on that before I finish out that verse? Because I know I've said a lot.
Let me throw something in because I guess I think maybe the other side of the coin, and I'm thinking about, you know, my experience, you know, doing gospel rap, you know, for a number of years. I think there is something to being a big fish in a small pond. You know what I'm saying? Like if you can be, because I remember Brother Jay describing how at the Passover week you might be able to perform or whatever, and like that's like a big deal. You know, it's like going to the Grammys. You know, and so I think when you have a small market, you know, but you can be kind of on top of that small market, then there is a buzz that you get from that. And what happens is as that market expands, like so like right now, it's a lot harder to be a successful gospel rapper than it was, you know, maybe some years ago, you know, because, you know, you have so many other people doing it. You know, from a competition standpoint, there's so many people doing it. So I think what you have with these guys, and don't get me wrong, like from listening to them rap, most of them actually believe what they're saying. I mean, they're really passionate about what they're saying. I'm not taking anything away from it. But I think there is that fame aspect that I think it can just be, for anybody, it can be intoxicating. And being a big fish in a small Hebrew Israelite rap pond, I think can be, you know, very attractive for a guy who maybe they couldn't make it, you know, as far as rap-wise out in the world. And so, but, you know, this is an opportunity for them to, you know, to shine and you know, really get on like that, you know. So it's a very interesting dynamic, man. But then also, to your point, I want to say about, when you're talking about culture, the importance of studying culture. I think that's a great analogy with the Star Wars guy, because really, I'm stepping out from a missionary standpoint, right? I'm kind of looking at it from a broad perspective. You know, when you talk about missionaries, that's what they're going to do. Or anthropologists, that's what they're going to do. They're going to study the culture. They're going to get to understand the culture so that they can more effectively, you know, from the standpoint of a missionary, so they can more effectively engage the culture. And anthropologists, let's say if you just dig up some ancient civilization, well, you might find some pottery shards or something like that with, you know, somebody kneeling towards a waterfall. So now you know, okay, well, they must have worshipped, you know, at a waterfall, or maybe they worship the god of water. I mean, there's certain things that you can find out about a culture based upon their art. And so, you know, sometimes I think that, you know, as a Christian apologist, or just Christians in general, sometimes we limit ourselves in terms of the ways in which we can engage other cultures and be effective in spreading the gospel, because we're not taking time to really take in where they're coming from, you know. And I think listening is a big part of preaching the gospel. It's not just about getting out and shouting, you know, the word of God. That's great. But if you can really listen to people and understand where they're at, you can be more precise in terms of how you engage them.
Hey, nothing, it's about this Jew. 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 All praises to Yahuwah, the Most High, and his son Yeshua. Who sprang right out of Judah. He did. If you're a Gentile, you're a loser.
Hey, y'all hear that? Did you hear?
I missed the last part.
Yeah, I couldn't make out a lot of it.
He says, all praises to Yahuwah. And then he says, some who sprang right out of Judah. And then he says,
"Oh yeah,
if you're a
I
Gentile,
heard that
you're a
earlier.
loser.
Yeah.
If you're a Gentile, you're a loser.
You're a loser.
Hey, what do you think of that hook, Abu? Ain't nothing ish about this Jew?
They believe that the phrase Jewish, they think that suffix ish entails something inauthentic. Like, for example, the way they would describe it is, for example, if you say, well, I'll meet you at 7-ish, it means not quite 7, but around there, something close. Or if you say, well, what color is the car? The car is sort of greenish. It means not quite green, but sort of approaching that. And they use that to argue that the term Jewish used in the mainstream by mainstream Jews entails an admission that they're not authentic, that it means not quite Jewish, but not quite Jews, but approaching that. That's what they think it means. Of course, what they've always missed is that it's actually just a suffix that, aside from that usage, it's a suffix that in many Teutonic, in the Teutonic languages, not only English but German, it turns nouns into adjectives. So that's like we have English, Irish, and so on down the line.
Yeah, Scottish, British. I think there's even a spot in the scripture where I forget what it is now off the top of my head, where that is actually used of a woman that's an English. You could translate it in English with that same suffix. But check this out. That was also Current God Euro. But really, I want to play maybe one more current-ish song and then go back to an older song. And I believe this is right? You like that? This is Mitri Down.
Hey, put a bad Mitri on that brother's head. Now you ready? Yeah.
Hey, you can get me.
Let me play some of a verse. Here's the last verse.
Looking fly, then a zipper all white in the hood. Dope heads trying to sniff us. My father, king of the hill. You can call me Bobby. Keep the law. G code good fella. John got it. Yeshua Christ all black. Ironically, he's all light. So I'm in a all black party wearing all white. Reach me down,
I like that line where he says, "My father, king of the hill. You can call me Bobby." But that's some of the verse. So there's verses too. I was just playing that one hook. But I thought you might have seen that video, Abu. Mitri down, all white with my fringes on. That's what it is.
It's
funny
in
the video.
There's a bit of history even in that pronunciation there, because there's verses in the Bible that refer to turbans, but because of the more ecclesiastical language of the King James Bible, they use the word mitre. Sort of like what you'll find in the Anglican and Catholic churches, the mitre, the mitra in Greek. And so way back in One West, they pronounce, in the original school, they pronounced that, it's M-I-T-R-E in the King James. They pronounced it me-tree. And unfortunately, that pronunciation has continued on to this day for decades. And so now you have these rappers, I don't even know what their affiliation is, but they're attempting to allude to a turban, but they're calling it the me-tree.
Yeah. Now check this out. There's a little spot in the video around 4:13. There's a spot where they show a close-up of books. And the books, it's got the KJV Apocrypha, the Holy Bible, a book written by someone, Charles, I can't read, and then the Book of Jubilees. So we all know what camp this is, don't we, Abu? What camp would that be?
Well, actually, I don't know for certain, but I would guess GOCC.
GOCC. It's got to be GOCC.
So they got into that.
There's two other books that look like, one looks like the title was Witches God. I can't see it quite. And I swear the bottom looked like it said Kabbalah.
Speaking of which, by the way, that's another sign of how these groups continue to divide and fractures. Not only are they, coming up with slightly different tribes breakdowns and different names for God, and now even the canon of the Bible is changing from group to group, So you have some that reject Jubilees and some who obviously employ it.
All the camps we know of that are one Westers except the Apocrypha. But since then, GOCC has added Jubilees and Jasher. And I even
Enoch,
heard,
if I'm not mistaken.
You can see the book of Jasher at the 307 mark. Right at the 307 mark, you see the Book of Jasher pretty clear there.
And you know what's so funny about that? Check this out, everybody. Oh yeah, you're right. Yep, boom, you got it. Here's what's interesting. Out of all the books they could have shown, right? Notice they show books distinctive to their camp. I'm just saying,
indeed.
like I'm just saying, it's interesting, you know, the way these dudes roll, and that's what I'm saying. If you watch these videos and you do some discernment, you can learn a lot about what's going on. And we're just trying to show you that as sort of the part of this project, as well as just, you know, fill in some of the blanks about what's going on, like behind the scenes, as much as we could in this short amount of time. They also, of course, show From Babylon to Timbuktu at the end of the video, which, you know, that's everybody's go-to right there. Now, I was going to go back and play at least one old school song. The Jesus Judgment Day song by the Saints. Now, if you go on YouTube and look up a YouTube channel, OG Don Ninja, and look up the Saints, Jesus Judgment Day, you'll see a picture of a vinyl record. That's right. These dudes apparently press vinyl, which back in 97 was very, very difficult to do. 1997, it says, I can't read the name of the record label, but someone with better eyes or some computer technology probably could. Produced through the inspiration of the Most High in Christ by the Saints. So check it out, y'all. Jesus made this beat. Executive producer, Ablayam Shabbat or something. This joint came out in 97. The three songs I see right here are Jesus Judgment Day, which I'm about to play a snippet of, Daniel 7:18, and Recompense. Those are the three songs. Now, I'm going to play this, and at the end of this little clip I'm going to play, the dude says something that is fundamental. Fundamental. I want everyone to listen.
But if you fall in jeopardy, then listen close and observe these words. You got to yearn or you might get burned. And when the flesh decay, you know you're done away. Yahweh Judgment Day, less than 3 years left.
That's actually all I wanted to play. Do you guys hear it?
Yeah, I heard it.
I need you to repeat it.
Less than 3 years left.
In 97. That is interesting.
Yep.
That is interesting. That shows to what extent they were affected.
Yep, exactly. Let me play this one more time, just so you guys can see. Less than 3 years left. Damn this world unfurl, I think is what it says. So, Abu, why is he saying in 1997, less than 3 years left?
Well, because it was One West had a breakdown that did, based on that, you know, after 2 days he will revive you and so forth, and a day is 1,000 years for the Lord or something to that effect. It was their breakdown was that in the year 2000 was when Christ is going to come back in the spaceship and, you know, fire laser beams and Esau's kingdom, as they would say, destroy America. And even though they split and then split again and again throughout the 90s, most of the groups hung on to that belief that the world was going to end in the year 2000. And it seems this rap group was one of them. You know, 1997, they're saying 3 years left. It's obvious they're referring to the old One West doctrine that the world is going to end in the year 2000.
So these guys might have been part of like the sort of original school.
Absolutely. I mean, for them to be using Lashon Kodash in the 90s, because keep in mind, that's before the Internet. GMS really, they sort of started, they were the pioneers of, like, really spreading their doctrines over the Internet, and then, of course, it sort of got out of control to the point where now nobody's controlling it, so the thing's going to keep, evolving.
You're saying GMS made Lashon Kodash great again?
Yeah. In a sense. That they were they were the first to really start becoming popular on the Internet through YouTube, and then a number of other groups, you know, jumped on board and they got popular as well and outshined GMS. But the point is that before GMS did that around 2007 is when they started to take off. Before that, it was a very, very like small clique. They were on the Internet, but they didn't have a lot of reach like the way they do now. The various groups. So for someone in 1997 to be using Lashon Kodash, it means even if they weren't members of One West at the time, they had to have been very close to it. Maybe former members, maybe current members, or members of a splinter group, or someone really closely influenced. Because it was not a lot of people were using Lashon Kodash back then.
To reiterate, because I know we went in with a lot of detail in this, real quickly, can you explain, to say someone's listening, what's Lashon Kodash?
Sorry about that. Yes, I just realized Lashon Kodesh is the way they pronounce Lashon Chodesh. That's their very distinct version of Hebrew. It's something that was in the now people who are very distant from these groups use it because it's disseminated on the internet. But back in the 90s, it was only people very closely related to One West that used it.
Byzantine kings. What can you tell people about them? Why are they significant?
Well, there was a period when Tazadakia took over the original school, the ICUPK, One West. It had moved to 1941 Madison Avenue. But when Tazadakia took over that group, he started a record label. If I recall correctly, it was called Black Icon Productions or something to that effect. And he was putting out these videos promising to be that, it was going to be one of the biggest labels in the music industry, and, they're going to come out with all these rap groups. And one of the rap groups that they put out, I think they had a female group as well, but the one group that they did put out there was this group called the Byzantine Kings. Now, because they were associated with the ICGJC, and there was a lot of hatred amongst all the other rival groups for the ICGJC, people would only speak negatively of this group. But honestly, I personally thought it was a particularly interesting group. They did have a studio in Hackensack, New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, and they put out videos. Not anything as flashy as Purple Rain, but I would say at the time it was the flashiest thing any of them had ever produced up to that point. This is sort of the precursor to Nathaniel's success. Tazadakia was, in his time, it was sort of unprecedented, his flashiness, his production quality, and all that. And they were interesting, and they similarly a lot of their songs had sort of their tracks had a prosperity feel to it. It was a lot of bragging about what they're about to get, what God's going to bless them with. But occasionally they would get into these doctrinal beefs, and they would pack a lot in. Like, for example, they had one that was it might have been their most famous track. It was called Straight Outta Hell, and it was where they attacked several other groups. So they attacked the ISUPK, they attacked GMS, they attacked GOCC, and they packed a lot in, and it was fairly cerebral. It was interesting. Perhaps this is a bad analogy because he's not an Israelite, but the analogy I would reach for is someone like Jay Electronica. You know how he has his tracks have a lot of information packed in, and that's sort of the way the Byzantine Kings were when they would get into a doctrinal beef and put it into a rap. I mean, in Straight Outta Hell, they're talking about the lunar Sabbath versus the seventh-day Sabbath, all kinds of things, and they went after everybody. They went after Tahar, they went after Yohana, the leader of ISUPK, and so on. And you could spend a considerable amount of time getting into what they were talking about, because they mentioned everything. They mentioned the fact that after Yohana broke away from the ICGJC, he took one of the ICGJC's old spots. He took their old spot and sort of recreated a new school, like, they did a refurbishing of sorts. And a lot of stuff like that. Even their conception of Mary they get into, like I said, the Sabbath. It was fairly interesting.
The Israelite Church of God and Jesus Christ, we got mad skills. We found another way to crush you fools. That's how the video starts. Where all these clowns come from. Let me play some of this.
Straight out of hell is a rebel camp called GMS, led by Tahar and all of his BS. Got a few chumps, think he got a few goons. These niggas count Sabbaths from the new moon. Friday, sundown to Saturday, sundown. These niggas is demons, they straight defiling it. The truth, they out of it, fake and counterfeit. Everything they teach, we straight confounding it. The Sabbath ain't 7 days from the new moon. You don't count from the moons, you damn buffoons. It's blasphemous. The moon was made the 4th day, and the Sabbath was 3 days after it. You fat bastard, you gay and you negative. You niggas about to get ran out of Connecticut. So stay on the internet running your lips, but you ain't been back with 1/2/5. Straight out of hell.
There's so much put in there that they.
Wow.
But you notice how they get
Adam,
into
could
the
you hear any of
Sabbath?
that?
Yeah, I mean, some of it like kind of blinked out on me, but I heard the 3 days and the, it sounded like he was really going in, man.
Yeah, if you look up Straight Outta Hell, Byzantine Kings, it's on the YouTube channel called Tazadakia IGJC. Or ICGJC. And it's 3 minutes and 22 seconds, got 11,000 views. That's what it is. What you going to say, though, Abu?
Two quick things about that they really packed in there really quickly was first, there's a dispute between GMS and most of the other groups. The original school taught that the Sabbath is precisely what, the mainstream Judaism and Seventh-day Adventists claim it is, which is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. GMS later on adopted the lunar Sabbath doctrine. Others that did it before them, and somehow along the way they picked it up, and they teach that the Sabbath is always counting 7 days from the new moon. So, for example, for GMS, the Sabbath could fall on any day of the week. This month it could be every Wednesday. Next month it could be every Thursday. As a result, he was trying to refute that by noting that the moon was created on the fourth day according to their interpretation of Genesis, and therefore the Sabbath was 3 days after it. Therefore, the Sabbath is not based on the new moon. That was his point. A second thing that he slipped in there right at the end, he said, stay on the internet running your lips, but you ain't been on 125th since. GMS, when they broke away, now they preach mainly on 34th Street and a number of other locations, but they used to preach up on 125th Street, which was right near where the ICGJC school is. And what had happened was there was a period where, they were relatively friendly, but Tasadakia came out with a video called, because, this questions started to arise as the IGJC started getting bigger and more popular. Questions became arising, well, what about these other groups? And so in an attempt to distinguish themselves from the other groups, Tazadaki came out with a DVD called Purge Out the Rebels, where he was going to say that, the rest of them are, people who broke away from the true church, and therefore they're just antichrists, using 1 John 2:19. But anyway, they had managed to sort of trick GMS members into saying on camera that they were from the former school. Tazadaki came up and was friendly with them and then sort of videotaped them saying things which he used against them in the DVD. They became enraged, and they started being a lot more disrespectful towards the ICGJC after that, and eventually it reached the point where at one point, the GMS can be very aggressive. They got rather aggressive, maybe even physical, with a certain member of the ICGJC who happened to be Tazadaki's brother, his half-brother or something like that, a blood relative. And that triggered a physical fight, which resulted in significantly more members of the ICGJC swarming GMS and assaulting them. And so that's what that was an allusion to, because after they essentially got jumped, after they got attacked, after they had this physical brawl on 125th Street, GMS hasn't, that was in 2005, they haven't been on 125th Street since. And he was sort of mocking them for that.
That's why they're on 34th now.
Apparently. They were, yeah. They received an unfortunate beating and sent them down.
Let me play a little bit more of this.
Straight out of hell, the Antichrist called light body. Ramachan, you a chick in the man body. Next time you do an internet blog, tell everybody you had sex with a dog. See, that's real rap. We don't make this up as real facts. You got put out of the church, we still pack. You joined with Rakashi Yard and y'all split, then what's the deal with that? He's a fornicator, he proud and disloyal. Here is a little nursery rhyme for you. Knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone. You got it all wrong and the dog got bone. No order within. Y'all teaching the angels came down and they slept with the daughters of men. But Christ said they neither marry nor given into marriage. Y'all teach madness straight out of hell.
That was dissing Ricard when he was with Light and Body, but now he's GOCC. Yeah. That's the dude that debated James White, everybody. The dude just straight up said in that song that Ricard had sex with a dog. That's what he just said.
Well, yeah, he definitely did.
To be fair, he wasn't saying that about Rakashi Yar, but rather about Ramachan, who was. What had happened was, and it's funny because there's a bit of history about about GOCC here that I think a lot of people don't know. The GOCC, the leader of it is a former member of the ICGJC. He's a former member of Tazadaki's group, but the GOCC didn't jump in a single leap. There's two splits that lead to their group. Originally, Rakashiyar left with another member called Ramachan. It was the two of them, and they were leaders of a group called the Light and Body Church. But then they had a split, and he alludes to that. Originally you're with Ramachan, and now you're out. They left the ICGJC, and then they suffered their own little schism. And so I don't know what happened to Light and Body Church. The GOCC is still around. Nonetheless, the thing with Ramachan, this is sort of the darker side of the ICGJC. They have some people have called it weaponized confessions. They have these things where they, when you enter the group, they get members to confess their sins. And sometimes they get them to confess on camera. Apparently they didn't get him to do this because otherwise they would have shared the footage. But, you join the group, you feel you found the new faith. and they get people to give up some of their dark secrets from the past. And unfortunately, people who leave the group end up getting what they confess to thrown in their face. It's not clear how much of that is accurate or not, but accusation that they put against Ramakhad was that during one of those moments when he was in the school, he had confessed to bestiality in the past. And so that's what they're alluding to.
Oh, that's wrong.
I don't know if it's accurate or not.
My goodness. All right, here's the next part.
Down in Texas, following Mashama niggas headed for the exit. Internet gangsters, really they queers. These niggas looking like the air up there. All that tough talk, see, it's not what it seems. Yeah, nigga, we're with the popular team. Yes, you in sackcloth, all of you cats lost. The brother approached by himself and ain't back off. When he left, you start talking what you gon' do. You West Snipes niggas too on fool. Y'all second generation niggas, hand me down doctrines. Y'all niggas don't really wanna just stop it. These dudes playing, they ain't Jews, man. Where y'all find them, middle of Sudan? It's too easy, I'm done with y'all. Shot murder is the name and the boy coming straight out of hell. Call us fat gangsta-licious, cause only gangsta-licious got faggot listeners. You a monster, a priest, a rapper, a clown. Trying to be a priest, got your ass shut down. Remember that comment about the brilliant, eloquent, gossip comforter? You know we had to come for you. Think bats, we hit hard, we swing back. You trying to get buzz, we here to stay cats. ICGJC, we run Jersey. We set up camps in your city, you heard me. Big up believers from Brick City to Camden. How you the house of Israel without no flock, without no house? Y'all bums panhandling. Shy murder open his mouth and can't stand it. Shy murder or shy monkey or shy maggot. Man, I'm done with this bastard. Straight out of hell, it's ISUPK. Can't forget Johanna, here rob your mama. That nigga's a thief. Here take the cash and run. A church man, he ain't got one. On 12th and Market, cursing out Israelite women. Why? Because they ain't got one. Bunch of weak ass pricks. Update them old ass fatigues that might come out of 96. Trying to go in the old buildings and carry your old name. Big ass head with one braid called Rogaine. Speak against the mother of God. You ain't looking for fruit, man. You looking for some dummies to rob. See, it's all about a dollar, huh? Trying to get some power, huh? These jackasses still be praying to Joshua. Dogs is dumb where they come from. When it's all done, these niggas going back to hell.
So that's like the end of that. And that's
pretty good, though.
Hey,
yeah.
You like that?
So
you notice at the end they got into it with ISUPK. They went after Johanna in that towards the end.
Yeah, of course.
And there was a lot packed in there.
Stealing money
well.
accusation. Yeah, the stealing money accusation. You tried to get her old building with her old name, you know, all that. So that's kind of that refurbished comment in an earlier version. So
also,
there's a lot there with
there's
that.
Another thing he slipped in there where he said talking against the mother of God, you're not looking for food, you're looking for some dummies to rob. Apparently, when things started to fall apart for Johanna, because Johanna remained with the ICUPK, which became the ICGJC, when things started to fall apart for him was when, this is the rumor anyway, when Tazadakia started to introduce the virgin birth doctrine, because people don't know this, though, the original school rejected the virgin birth. They claimed it was unbiblical.
Right.
Tazadakia brought that into the original school, and not only the virgin birth, he also introduced the perpetual virginity of Mary. He held that not only was Mary a virgin at the time, when Jesus was born, that she was a virgin for the entirety of her life. And it's interesting because the arguments they use old school, like Orthodox and Catholic arguments. And then on top of that, even more so, which was sort of unprecedented, they started referring to Mary as the Mother of God, because they also started saying that Jesus is the God of the Old Testament. And as a result, that's when Johanna tried to buck up against that, because those were clearly doctrinal innovations, and that's when everything apparently started to fall apart for him. That's when, finally, even the leadership started bringing out the accusations which had been going on forever, of his stealing from members and stuff like that. And so that's when he got pushed out. But so when he says that, trying to speak against the Mother of God, he's talking about how Johanna was one of the people who tried to resist that change towards accepting the virgin birth, accepting the perpetual virginity of Mary, and accepting even that title, Mother of God.
Yeah, there's a video that I think might refer to some of that altercation situation. It's titled PMS Gets Run Out the Bronx. So instead of GMS, they call it PMS. By the way, I guess we should be warning people there's some language in this show, because there's language in these lyrics, and there's really no way to, edit all that, whatever. Yeah, he said they were not going nowhere, but he left PMS, and they got run off 34th Street, whatever. So anyways, you see all this beef going back, and here's what's interesting about this. Check it out. they'll accuse us of bringing division and, all that. Man, there's been so much division in this movement since jump, and it's getting worse and worse. And here's what's up, man. The more this thing grows, as we do see it growing, we don't deny that for a second, this thing ain't going to get more unified. It's going to get more divided because it's not a work of Christ. It's not a work of the Spirit. There's no one Lord, one baptism. There's none of that.
Amen.
And so y'all are going to get more divided because it's a movement of the flesh. There's just no two ways about it. I mean, just what happened last year. Man, future world of Israel, I heard is down to 12 people, man. And I guess if you're starting out with 12, that's not a bad thing because Jesus did that. But if you went from a large number to 12, that's not so hot because ISOC came out of them, and ISOC is basically the new FWOI in Virginia, and they ain't got nobody left but maybe 12 members. Their FWI, Future World, is basically done as a camp. And now instead ISOC split off, which FWI wasn't all that huge, but now ISOC has kind of got all the people. You know what I'm saying? There's just going to be nonstop splits. I bet you're going to see a split out of IUIC. As they get bigger, I bet you'll see a split out of them. I bet you can.
Well, you see the Sakari. The Sakari guys came out of GMS. GMS came out of HODC.
Yes, Sakari
and so
came out of
down
GMS. Yeah. So it ain't going to stop, and it's been that way since the foundation. It's not new, and so this is not nation building. This is not gathering of dry bones. This is scattering. And so sometimes they want to blame, like their problems on us. We're new to the scene. Now, not a boo, you go back, but we're new to this, and we're just commenting on what we see, and it shows up in the hip-hop. Kind of some of the last things I want to say. We're closing down right about here, but I'd love Abu and then maybe Scott give final words about something you want to say about this. Obviously, people listening can tell we could do like 5 more shows on this, topic, but I do encourage people to check out the genius.com article because it's pretty decent, and they have a little accompanying video that I thought was really well done and very fair, and you'll learn a little bit about that from there, and that's what we used as a jump-off point from that, and the name of the article is Inside the Hebrew Israelite Movement That's Inspiring, Kendrick Lamar and Kodak Black. But go ahead, Abu. What you want to say, my man?
No, I don't have much to say. I'm just glad we got to get into the Byzantine Kings towards the end. I think that was one of the more interesting groups, even though they're gone now. I think those gentlemen are in their 40s now or something like that. But even though the other groups were very hostile to
42. According to his DatPiff page, 42 years old.
There you go. Yeah. So those guys, they were, for whatever their faults, whatever their doctrinal problems, I think they were one of the more interesting groups of the Israelite rap groups of the past. But that's all I have to say. I think Scott should say more.
Oh, real quick, we do have a live comment. One gentleman said, Sons of Man back in the day had a song called B.I.B.L.E. Now,
that was Killer Priest.
Sons of Man.
That was Killer Priest that had the basic instructions before leaving Earth, and that definitely was hardcore Hebrew Israelite. But Sons of Man was a Hebrew Israelite-inspired group. They actually had a number of references. They were kind of like the junior varsity of Wu-Tang Clan, and they had a whole grip of references. But go ahead. What you going to say, my man?
No, I was just going to pretty much echo that. I had the Sons of Man album back in the day. I was a big Wu-Tang fan anyway, I remember they had the Israeli news joint. I didn't know what they were talking about at the time, but now looking back on it. And I do think that, I don't know if Killer Priest, I don't know if the B.I.B.L., he may have kind of like loaned that song out. I'm trying to think if it was on the album or maybe he made an appearance because I somewhat remember it being on there. I think that might be right.
Right. So, yeah, man, I'm glad, Abu, you could jump on. Abu's one of the newer members of Shield Squad, but as far as doing apologetics to this religious movement, he's like the OG of the whole thing, and you could tell by his historical knowledge. That's why I knew he'd be perfect to have on this to explain some of the ins and outs. Adam Coleman, a.k.a. Sky Lane, what you want to say final, my man?
Yeah, man, I just want to say, I think, sometimes discussing things like this can be confusing, I think, for Christians or Christian apologists because we limit our understanding of what apologetics is to information. And I think one thing that we have to really, get a hold of is the fact that, when we're talking about engaging people for Christ, utilizing the tools of culture is just as, well, maybe not just as, but it's in addition to information of what we're saying, the vehicles that we're using is important as well. When you have different belief systems within one cultural context or one societal context, then what you see is those different belief systems kind of vying for position within the culture. You know what I mean? So, the music, the movies, and things like that, it's like they're kind of battling for position within the arts, because whoever influences the arts influences the minds of the people. And so, that's why it's so important that, I don't know who's out there listening, but, apologists, you begin to think about ways that you can use cultural mechanisms like memes right now. That's kind of like a big thing. You can put a meme out, that can express a real quick point. It's very effective. That's just where the culture is right now, So, I guess if anybody, in terms of what people draw from this discussion, I hope that they, understand that the music is a way in which they can learn about the culture of the Hebrew Israelites to engage them, and then B, just the importance of, using these types of tools for ourselves, whether it be hip hop or whatever else, using cultural tools to, sanctifying them for a kingdom purpose, so to speak. I enjoy listening to a lot of songs that, you sent me a lot of stuff, man, and I think it's very interesting. Like I said, I try to look at it stylistically, and I did notice that I think you probably got, there's no diss to anybody, but you probably have like a lot of old heads who just haven't taken the time to stay up to date on their music, and then you probably have a lot of young heads, who, maybe coming up under their wings, so they kind of got that trap style and aren't really developed lyrically. But I would say it seems like what I would expect to happen is, assuming that the Hebrew Israelite movement continues on, what I would expect to happen is that the music will probably continue to get better. I was impressed with the videos, but in terms of the musical quality itself, and, the lyrics, I would expect it to get, better over time. So, I would say the Christians, we need to do the same. Like, we need to make sure we stay on top of our craft. I take a lot of pride, for lack of a better way to say it, in terms of the gospel hip hop community, because I feel like from, the early 90s when I started getting into it till now, we've just grown leaps and bounds, man. I just think it shows the importance of, what we do as far as gospel hip-hop is concerned. We got to continue using that vehicle to get the gospel out. If we don't, somebody else will get their message out. So, we might as well stay on our A.
What I pray for is that the Lord could really get a hold of some of these men, and that same passion and zeal that they have could be for the gospel. Now, check this out. I'm going to try, with the 15 minutes left that I have, to try to bring in a caller, because it looks like someone's been on hold for 50 minutes, and I feel bad. So I'm going to try this.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? Shield Squad, what's good?
What? Oh, so real. So real.
Oh, man, I've been listening to the whole thing, y'all. I ain't got not much to say. I've been just learning a lot. Just like I said, just been in the background on this one. In terms of the Hebrew music, it's not anything I really kind of get into all like that, but it's important, But I guess one thing I will say, somebody basically brought up that old passage about Isaiah, about how 7 women will flock to one man. But when you look at the fundamental basic history around that passage, especially since it was a prophecy, that was basically about how there was a shortage of men, whether it was by the sin of the nation, whether it was by armies that killed a good bit of the men. Either way, there was a shortage of men. And it basically left a lot of the women to, go into polygamy. Because back then, historically, if you did not have a child, it was shame unto you. So, you can look these things up. Today, it's totally different. If a woman does not have a child, well, hey, it's all good. But back in those days, that was a stain on you. Even when, there was one guy that had a daughter, and he said to God, the first person that comes before my eyes, I'll sacrifice him to you. Right. And all of a sudden it was his daughter.
Yeah.
One of the things she ended up saying was, oh man, let me go ahead and mourn away my sadness, and I'm also childless. So just want to give people a little bit of something to think about. But other than that, man, it was, definitely a solid show. I'm gonna go and listen to it again. You know.
No
All right,
doubt,
y'all.
man. Hey, it's good to hear
Keep
you,
them
for real. I think I got this figured out, brother. It's always good to hear fellow Shield Squad members in the building. Last person I think I haven't got to, I just want to double check. 773-641. Did you just want to listen, or are you trying to say something? Because I don't know who's doing what. This is VOCAB. What's up?
Oh, VOCAB, did you just throw me in?
Oh,
this is
Sectarian, all right.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you.
Well, I was just really listening in, but the little bit that I did listen to, it looks like y'all touching in my area regarding music. So if I'm correct, I am a lover of gospel music. Now, Hebrew Israelism music, interesting. I've heard some good tracks. Don't get me wrong. Most of it has more of a worldly feel to it. And I am the number one person who can critique gospel music. The difference is between them, our music, Christianity, if I would say gospel, contemporary gospel, old spiritual hymns, those particular songs speak to the soul.
Right.
I'll give you, for instance, like Precious Lord, my hand, lead me, guide.
Oh, there you go.
All the way, Precious Lord, take my hand. I ain't going to bust a note because I lost my voice tonight. So I'm definitely not going to bust a note. But when you hear songs like that, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saves the wretch like me, those particular songs are speaking to the soul. And not only that, it testifies to what Jesus was doing, saving wretched rags, filthy rags like us, who didn't deserve his amazing grace. When I hear those songs from the Hebrew Israelite side, you don't hear things like that. I've even tried to listen to quite a few tracks, and it does not touch my soul at all. If anything, it repels me and causes me to flip the dial. But, I mean no offense to anybody. I'm just giving true critique. But, yeah, I am a lover of gospel music. It does something to you. Y'all know I be sending it to y'all every morning with the devotional scriptures that I send every morning.
Yep.
So, Sister Jerry can take you all the way back, and Sister Jerry can bring you to 2017 with, people like Jay Moss and even with Brother Jay, who's on SOG. His music is awesome. Awesome.
Right.
So I'm a lover of his music as well, and shout out to Brother Jay, love you. But it's something about gospel music that literally touches the soul, and it speaks to your situation. Amen. And I would have to say Hebrew Israelite music doesn't do that for me. So that's all I wanted to say. I love you, dear brothers. I'm here listening.
Hey, thanks, Sister Jerry, for joining in. Shield Squad in the building. It's very good. All right, check it out, man. I'm going to end this show with this. Hey, I want to give a shout-out again to LeRon for letting us take over his channel briefly on Blog Talk. Sorry about a rough start. Super shout-out to Abu and Scott for joining in. Shield Squad's about to be out. Thank y'all, too, for joining in.